Welcome to the Courage Barbell Unlimited podcast with your host, legendary powerlifter and strength athlete, Chad Ikes. For most, the journey of strength starts in the gym, but should inevitably expand through all aspects of life. Join us as we discuss all things strength. Now, here's your host, Chad Ikes.
Hey guys and gals, we're back again for another episode with another special guest, a special guest. We have Paul Leonard again with us. Paul's just been in this game for so long and he has so much knowledge. And so it's just good to have him on here and catch up again with him. I was thinking about this the other day. I think I started lifting when I was like 11 or 12. So I've got like 41 years lifting. When did you start and how many years you got in it?
Well, I started lifting, I would say when I was 14 for sure, 1982. So I'm going to be 57 in a few weeks. So long time.
Yeah, little more than me then. So yeah, you got a lot of years in, and you're lucky because I feel like the years there's these. I guess with most sports, there's these years where there's just cool stuff happened. And you look back and you're like, oh man, that was a pivotal time in strength sports. And you were around through a couple of those years with all these just legendary, amazing athletes.
Yeah, when I started, my first official contest I did in 1986 when I was 18, my senior year of I did a non-sanctioned one in 86, early 86. I was still a senior in high school. And then in my first official contest was the fall of 86, a sanctioned meet up in New Hampshire. Growing up in Massachusetts, like the contiguous states, there was meets all over New England. So I competed in all the different states up there growing up. So, but yeah, so 86, if you look back, it was, powerlifting had been on network TV right before I got into it, but it was a couple years after that. ESPN had already been launched, but you would see the Hawaii meets on ESPN. You remember the Hawaii meets that were like the stars of the stars, you know?
Yeah,
and
those were huge.
Yeah, that was a must purchase for us in college. We had the 1985 Hawaii meet. Ed Cohen goes 2,200. Massachusetts native Ted Arcidi benches 705, and you know, I saw Ted. I met Ted a couple times, and I saw him when he did his comeback in '91. He did a 718 bench, and then he took the bench shirt off. And to this day, I've never seen an upper body like that. I mean, you know, just to have it around you. But yeah, Massachusetts was ripe with some of the best powerlifters of all time. You know, so. It was, and in that day and age, Chad, what it was we got our information primarily from the newsstand. So Powerlifting USA was in full effect and had been published since 77. And when I started training, about a year after I started training, a great guy named Dennis Caholen gave me his whole Powerlifting USA collection. So the first 10 years of it. So, I mean, I would read those, and I was in college, but I would read those and study those every night. They're amazing. And then back then, Iron Man was still being published by Perry Rader out of Nebraska, the old yellow cover ones. Those had so much good information, and Strength and Health and Muscular Development was still being published out of York Barbell. So Bob Hoffman. So there was some really good information that you could get, as well as on the, you know, in the bookstores. You know, there was more bodybuilding books, but Fred Hatfield and then Ricky Crane, God rest his soul, he passed recently, but you would see his ads in Powerlifting USA. You could buy, there was about 50 good books you could buy on powerlifting back then.
Yeah, I actually think about this every now and then, because back in those days, you knew a big meet was going on, and there might have been some of the forums starting, but you had that anticipation of what happened, who won, what was it? And like, I still remember that excitement of like trying to get to Barnes and Noble, waiting for the new Powerlifting USA to come out, or even as I was kind of coming up, you know, you're like, oh, next issue's the super heavyweight top 100. Let's see. I want to see it because I think I made it in it, you know? And I think that's something today's generation kind of is going to miss, that anticipation of that, waiting for those things.
Yeah. When I post, I try to post on my Instagram almost daily, but just a few times a week, I'll post some of the great pictures that I've seen, images over the years, because a picture's worth 1,000 words, and I'll post a pack, and I'll find the older stuff, and people always post like, oh my God, I love those magazines and so forth. Yeah, no, Powerlifting USA was Mike Lambert's a friend, and I was able to be published, not quite double digits, but I had articles published in there once I became an elite lifter, because I always felt that was my duty to give back. And what I would do is give back to my training partners. Like, how do I thank an Art LeBaire? How do I thank a Josh Bryant? Well, I wrote a story for them in Powerlifting USA, and I mailed it off on an old Microsoft floppy disk with some pictures. And then Mike would send me a personal check for $500 and 100 copies of the magazine. Yeah. I mean, Mike Lambert he was amazing. And, he published that magazine for 35 years. I have all 412 issues. And if maybe you recall this, Chad, in the 80s, there was such a thirst for knowledge that because Powerlifting USA came out on the first of the month, but they did that Power Hotline for like 3 years. They put out like a newsletter flyer that would be in the in-between weeks. It'd be on yellow paper, and it'd be like flash of the Hawaii meet, or flash that Ken Lane bench 722 at a meet in Texas. And it was like, it would fuel your thirst for the information.
It was a little teaser for the full edition.
It really was. There was such a market for it. And then at one point, people can't even believe this, but at the turn of the millennium, there was multiple magazines. There was Monster Muscle. Mm-hmm. There was and then sadly, remember published by Wesley Campen. Remember Wesley? Mm-hmm. And then, I wasn't in Arizona then, but he was, I don't know what inspired him, because I didn't know him, but, he had supported the sport, but he got the idea to become a bail bondsman. I don't know if it was from Dog the Bounty Hunter on TV and stuff, but sadly he was shot dead in Phoenix.
Oh.
And, about 15 years ago. And it was, the story, him and his partner were shot dead by a person they were trying to apprehend. And then when it all came down to it, the person was acquitted, and there was controversy. It's sad. Regardless, the man is dead, Yeah. But yeah, I have all those magazines too. I have Monster Muscle, Power Mag. There was early 2000s. There was a lot of magazines, and even God rest his soul, but Jeff Everson, remember Planet Muscle? Mm-hmm. It was kind of like I had met Jeff a couple times in California. He was married to Corey Everson, but he had been the editor-in-chief at one point at Muscle and Fitness, but he loved strength. He grew up with Bill Kazmaier, and he tried to bench 600 and tore his pec and documented that, but he was a high 500-pound bencher. So his magazine, Planet Muscle, had some really good strength information.
Yeah, that was one of the first ones that you could go to a store and buy that was still kind of had some bodybuilding, but it also had more strength stuff. Where Muscle and Fitness, every now and then they would have a strength article, but really it was mostly just bodybuilding stuff.
Yeah, when Fred Hatfield was at his zenith in the mid 80s, and he was writing for Muscle and Fitness, there would be a monthly powerlifting article in there, and then also be some features on how to get stronger. But yeah, you're right. By the late 80s, it had Muscle and Fitness became far more of a bodybuilding magazine. Definitely. At one point, Muscle and Fitness was sponsoring Ed Cohen, John Paul Sigmarsson, and Dave Passanella. And then sadly, unfortunately, Dave died in a car accident. But he was prominently featured in the 87 to 88, 89. He died in 90, sadly, but he was prominently figured in Muscle and Fitness. And he was really, he set the all-time world total record. He's from Arizona, so he was a legend out here.
That guy, if he wouldn't have passed away, I don't know what he would have done. Because dude was strong.
Yeah, I was, by happenstance, I was in my career. I was down in, I was in Atlanta for some work. And so we finished work at night, and we were adjacent to Georgia Tech. So I got to walk. I like to walk and see stadiums, and it was still light out. And they have a nice plaque dedicated, because in 1990, Georgia Tech was voted national football champion. It was a co-national championship. I think they shared it with Colorado. But anyways, Dave was their strength coach, and they dedicated a plaque that's on the side of their stadium. It's really neat because he was, the legacy lives on. But yeah, they had to create a stronger squat bar, the Passanella bar, the 55 kilo bar that they use in most federations now, because he was squatting ridiculous amounts of amounts of weights.
I seen him do 1,040. I didn't see it. I saw video of it, but did like 1,040, but he walked it out and he was squatting just as wide as we were squatting in monoliths. And I'm like, 1,040 and he gets that wide still? Like, that's impressive.
Yeah. There's anybody watching this, YouTube's your friend. There is some footage. I definitely believe there's Dave Passanella footage up there, because he was also on, some of those meets were on ESPN back in the day. If you remember,
yes.
ESPN had a video magazine at the turn of the back of the 80s into the early 90s called American Muscle.
Yeah, and I remember that. I forgot about that.
It was really cool because they would show some of the top powerlifters. I remember one time I saw, he could never beat Ed Cohen, but there was that lifter out of Florida, Gary Drigo. He was a 220er, and they showed a footage. They went down and taped him training in Florida, and he cooked off a set of 4 or 5 in the bench for like 20.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just like Gary Drigo. He was ridiculously strong. And I can remember American Muscle did some work or some footage of Dave Passanella and some of the strength stars of the day, which was really cool. It's a really cool time and day,
Yeah, there's been a few times throughout, and I mean, in some instances, we're kind of in an interesting time because there's some unbelievable raw lifters right now. But one of the things I did want to talk about is you're still lifting regularly, and you just had your hip replaced. So my first question is, and because I hear this all the time, like, well, he lifted for so many years, and I'm like, I worked in physical therapy. I was a physical therapy tech for a long time. I saw tons of people getting hip replacements that didn't lift at all. So did they try to tell you it was because you lifted so much or you lifted so heavy or anything like that?
Well, I've always trying to take care of my health, and so I was pretty healthy, but it wasn't anything negative like that, in terms of, I didn't try to investigate why my hip, in this case my left hip, finally gave out, was bone on bone. Again, I'll be 57 in a few weeks, so I deadlifted officially at least 500 pounds for 40 years. I was over 600 for over 30 years, legitimately, in documented contests, in drug tested and non-drug tested. I wasn't the biggest guy, Chad, if you will. I was sickly and premature and had my last rites. So I graduated high school at about 215. After that summer, I was 235. I was really training. So, but for me to get into the 300s, of which I was for over 10 years, I probably wasn't a natural 300 pounder. I'm not making excuses for any of this stuff. I also worked, I retired last year. I had a career in law enforcement, which was 33 years as a federal agent. And before that, really starting in grade 7, I had a grueling schedule in that I went to an exam school. So I had to be in my chair by 7 a.m. And college was a lot of jobs and a lot of work. And so I worked really hard. So there were times sleep wasn't a premium. So what could lead that to? So in doing my research on prior to getting my hip replaced, I listened to Dan John, Dan, that is, right? He's an expert. He's had both hips done. He was a thrower. Now, I was never a thrower, but Dan, in his content online, he said, hey, I was predisposed to have my hips replaced the day I was born because I had a condition. I didn't have anything such as that. Like, I didn't know of any genetic condition in my family history, and there's no other lifters in my family tree. So I really don't know what if there was anything that could have been, I don't know,
could have
avoided,
just been
or
wear and tear of life.
Yeah, over the years, well, so what I opined, so back at my tallest, I was a little over 6'2", right? So, and when I started I trained a traditional way, but when I learned about the West Side system in like 93, Louis always said, keep your feet as straight as you can when you squat, right?
Right.
And I was a wide stance squatter. So I forced myself the first year doing West Side, I had a 12-inch box, but I also got a 10-inch milk crate. So I would do a lot of work squatting down with a traditional barbell, regular Texas power bar on my back to a 10-inch milk crate and do 10 doubles, 10. I would do a lot of work loosening my hips up. At the same time, I did a lot of hip flexor sit-ups, straight leg sit-ups, Janda sit-ups. I really strengthened my hip flexors.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Well, that's
and
like one of the things Louis because I remember actually talking to Louis about this. A lot of his guys turn their feet out, but he was like, well, listen, if you don't have the flexibility, then you got to turn your feet out. But if you want to get more hip flexor activation, you want to try to keep your feet straight, which I've always found to be pretty true.
yeah. So again, in looking back, if anybody, hopefully, if I can help anybody and anybody can DM me, my Instagram's Paul J. Leonard PLUSA, because if I could help anybody avoid getting any type of surgery or so forth, I was never in pain, Chad. I did a couple competitive years of strongman. I did over 1,000-pound yoke. I was able to pull a 66,000-pound train at Railtown. I did a lot of stuff with my body. If anything, if I could have gone back, I probably should have rested a little bit more. But one thing I was lucky of, I was never in pain. So this past year in November, I pulled a deadlift against some bands, and my left hip vibrated in a way when I locked out, and it was only about 400 and so pounds of bar weight and resistance, and it was something that I've done for over 40 years, but it got sore and it didn't get better. Then the next week I went to announce the IPL Worlds for Steve Dennison in Vegas, and I was kind of limping around, and then as a tradition, Steve brings us over there, so I always at the end of the meet, I help them load the trucks too, my broadcast, because everybody likes to go see the circus, but who cleans up after the elephants?
Yes.
So when a powerlifting meet happens, and you see Steve has a whole crew that does it, but man, I'll help out and load. And I was kind of limping around carrying stuff, and certainly not really carrying my weight. But then I went to see the doctor, and it's really a 2-month wait once you find a specialist to from the minute they see you and go, man, your hip's trash, to we can help you. So and then I thought, okay, I'd only had one cortisone shot in my life. So I said, okay, I had one in my knee when I was 50, because my daughter was playing club volleyball and I was doing jumping drills with her, and it aggravated my knee. One cortisone shot made it feel great. So I told the doctor, I said, hey, this is December. I'm scheduled for surgery in February. Can you just give me a cortisone shot? Because I went to the 3 college football games this year with the Bull Crow with Willie Wessels and my buddies. And I said, man, I don't want to be limping around for that. You might as well numb it till I go to surgery. They said, no, we can't numb that because there's a higher incidence of potential infection if you're given cortisone within 3 months of having a joint repaired or replaced.
Really? I did not know
Yeah,
that.
kind of trippy. So, and I'm not a pain pill guy. My whole life I've maybe taken a handful of Advil, to be honest with you. And I was never in pain. It was kind of a hassle. I don't know if you've ever done martial arts or have an experience of, or in law enforcement where they teach you to hit the common peroneal above the knee.
Mm-hmm.
So when my hip went out, if I was walking, it felt like the back up near where your leg kind of goes into your glute. Like it would kind of, not like it was going to collapse like a knee, but it was just like, you'd get like a negative feeling like, oh, that's not pleasant. And, I hobbled around for a few months, and then, so you get ready to go in. If you've never, this is my 4th surgery I've had both pecs reattached. I caught a runaway squat bar on my elbow. So I've had my elbow attached. I've never had a surgery below the waist, Chad. I was lucky. Right. So, so they make sure you're in shape, and I started immediately losing weight because I know that's part of the drill. And I probably lost about 10 pounds of fat because they're going to give you an EKG before they work on you.
Right.
Had that done to make sure your heart's good. And then to include, I always give blood because my over the years, my body's been very efficient at making red blood, and I'm O negative. So I go give it the Red Cross quarterly. So I scheduled that a couple weeks before my surgery to thin my blood out as much as I could. Consulted with my, I consulted with my, the surgeon, and they went in and did it, and did it on February 25th. So today is 16 days later. And man, I got to tell you, after having other surgeries, like you get there early at this. Have you ever had a surgery, Chad?
Yes.
Yeah, you get there early. I got there at like 7 a.m. They didn't start me until 9, but by 12:30 I was up walking, and the hip felt amazing. There was no more discomfort. The absolute worn out joint's been replaced by a titanium mixed with some, a super joint, right? Mm-hmm. In comparing notes online to Travis Ortmeyer, who I've met a few times, he had his hip replaced last year, and then he walked with a 1,000-pound yoke this year. So
yeah, I would actually like to get Travis back on and talk to him a little bit, because his recovery is going awesome.
Yeah, so I didn't have his direct info, but Willie Wessels is my friend. So like when I was planning this, Willie reached out through him and cut and pasted a text that he'd sent, because there's only two choices really when you get done a hip replacement. It's do it anteriorly or do it posteriorly. Anteriorly is when they used to go in and cut your glute from the behind area, and it was like more associated with failures, and they would get dislocated. Anteriorly, that's how Travis has had it done. That's how my friend Jerry Pritchett's had it done last year, and that's how Ed Cohen.
I didn't realize Pritchett had it done too.
Yeah, Jerry had it done in June, and then in November, because I saw him in person. He's in Phoenix, and I'm in Tucson. I saw him in person in December, and he looked amazing. But in November, when he was over to announce the Rogue Games there, the huge strongman championship in Scotland, he lifted the Dinny Stones easy.
Really?
So I've seen him because he had deadlifted 1060 before. I've seen on his Instagram him deadlift well over 600 cents. So I haven't asked Jerry what his plans are. I know he just announced the Arnold for Rogue and did a great job. I don't know what his plans are. I mean, you see how strong his son is, Bubba, is now at 14. Yes. He's doing man-sized weight. So
it's
Jerry,
crazy.
My friend, it's amazing. So I don't know what Jerry's next step is, but like just like the surgeon told me, and Jerry told me, and Ed Cohen told me, and no one's not told me that you won't feel amazing afterwards, and you really do.
Well, I think I worked in physical therapy, but it was back in probably 90 to 96 or something. And, back then they did the hip and they didn't want no weight bearing, and you were in bed, and it's like, I think that was probably one of the worst things they could have done, where now you guys are up walking. Like after surgery, you're up walking.
That's correct.
And I'm just amazed at how well the people I know that have had hips done, like everybody's doing just awesome. And guys are like, yeah, it felt creaky and cracky, and now it moves smooth and there's no pain. And it's almost like they used to always tell people to try to put it off as long as you can. And I don't know if they're still telling people that, but it's like, hey, if it starts hindering the shape you can stay in, it's probably time to go ahead and do it. It seems like to me.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. Like the shape you're in. So I was a very active person, even though I was a super heavyweight at heart, if you will. But my whole plan was I got as big as I could and as heavy as I could by age 30, right? I got up to 325, and I got my elite at the APF seniors in Chicago. And then once, for me, I never put all my best lifts together, but I got as big as I could. And then my dad died later that year, and I'm like, man, I started thinking of mortality, and I'm like, man, I was healthy, but I just wanted to stay healthy. So, and then kids soon followed. Then I got into strongman. So I was never as heavy as I was when I was 30, but I always like to move around and stuff. And from watching you and what I've learned about you, my friend, you're on bikes and doing stuff. And I was, I consider Stan Efferding a friend. And when he came out with the 10-minute walks a few years ago, I mean, that was stuff that I was doing even at my heaviest at 325. I like to instinctually, once I had a big meal, and I was a law enforcement agent, so I would always walk. always walk. And going back to those days, I was in an office in Southern California. So I would average 30,000 miles a year driven in my government car as a federal agent in SoCal.
Yeah.
But that being said, like I didn't want to live a total sedentary life. My office, we moved in 98. I was in the same office from 91 to 98 over in Glendale. We moved from a 2-story building to a 10-story building. So what I would do, I had a long commute in because I live 40 miles out because I wanted to live in Orange County. So if I went to that office that day, like the first thing I do when I would park my car usually at the top on the roof, and I would get out, and we had a 5-story parking lot with ramps. So I'd walk the ramps once, then jump in the elevator, then go into my office building. And I would walk. We were on the 7th floor, so I'd walk that's 14 flights. I would do that. So I kind of was doing the stuff Stan talks about, like just not to, it wasn't a sprint. It was just like pumping blood and staying healthy, like even your Instagram post today about you like parked across the street across the far end of a market. That's what I do. It's not the law enforcement that parks away from everybody, but I like to swing the door open on one of my, whatever car I'm driving, a vehicle, like I'm John Wayne, and I don't want to be in anyone's way. I'm not worried about anyone sneaking up on me, but like, then I walk a little bit, for goodness sakes, I think it's funny when you go someplace and you see someone waiting for like a space 20 feet closer. Like,
yeah, I don't. Yeah. It's funny because as you were saying that, I was thinking about that post I did this morning where basically I went to pick up a gift for some friends of mine, and I got there early, and I'm like, okay, I can sit here for 10 minutes so I can walk around. What the hell am I doing in here? Get the hell out of the car and walk. And, it all kind of started. I remember Stan talking about the 10 minutes after eating, and I started doing that, and I'm like, holy cow, like this actually really makes a difference. And then you start thinking about it, and you're like, man, it's all these little things during the day. Yeah, if people are like, oh, I need to lose like 20 pounds. It's like, okay, well, first thing, stop waiting 20 minutes to park in front and just go park in the back.
That's right.
There's all these little choices we make throughout the day that are not. It's not the huge big one choice that's so important. It's all the little ones.
Yeah, and we come from the same ilk. Like there was always that, the old adage, don't walk if you could stand, don't stand if you could sit, don't sit if you could lay down, you're trying to become a super. But if you look at the 30,000 foot view of what's going on in strength athletics, the strongest guys in the world right now are the strong men. They are bending their legs against resistance hundreds of times a week, as opposed to, and I did it. I can look, I'm not preaching to the choir. I'm coming clean. Like there was a time where I was really hit a few big 3 max effort attempts. And then I'm like, man, that's a good workout. Well, when I came to strongman and started dragging and carrying and loading and just moving my legs against resistance a lot more frequently, I became a better strength athlete and healthier. So like I coach people now, and I know you do, but when I coach family members, I'm like, or somebody that I'm not even going to charge, because you learn after a while, you give out enough free advice and people don't pay attention to it. But if somebody comes, and it's not about the money, but people I worked with, for example, in an office environment, like I was when I finished my career, I was the special agent in charge. So I supervised 25 different people and 75 different people over the course of about a 15-year career. Is that like the administrative staff and some of those great people I work with, I'm like, they'll always, they start talking. You're like, oh, I need to get in shape. I go, okay, this is what I want you to do. I want you to, bend your legs, 100 times a day, do 10 sets of 10 body weight squats. Do a set in the morning when your shower's warming up. Do a set outside your car when your car's warming up. We're in Arizona. Yeah. Like, not be unrealistic. I'd come over to I treated my employees like gold. I love that the admin staff supported me, and then I had agents that go out and risk their lives. You know what I'm saying? I got a message today, a case that I did. If anyone wants to Google it, there was a defendant, a bad guy in Arizona named Mitchell, who raped a 15-year-old girl. That was one of the last cases I supervised as a special agent in charge. He was sentenced to 27 years yesterday. Good for him. He needs to rot. So, yes. But I had people that would go out and risk their lives for me. So I'm like, and everybody's different. But once I got to know people and like, oh, what should I do? I said, do squats. I'd show them how to do squats at their chair. I'm like, just do box squats. Do if 10's too much, do 5 3 times a day.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm saying? Just every time, you know, and I'd be like, don't sit around. Hey, come on, I'd take my whoever. I'm like, let's go for a walk. We ate, you know what I'm saying? Like we did our due diligence where I worked, but we were adjacent to a shopping plaza. So I'm like, come on, let's get out of the office. Let's get fresh air. Let's go talk.
Yeah.
Like, because you don't want to ever divorce yourself from health. You know what I'm saying?
I think,
and,
I think it's interesting you say this, and I love our talks because we always go a little bit everywhere. I always try to like analyze my career in powerlifting, just to like, what could I learn? What could I have done better to coach people? And it was funny because I posted some old videos the other day, and some of my clients were like, hey, you didn't do this or this. And I go, yeah, like I'm still learning. Like I never stopped learning. Even when I stopped competing, I didn't stop learning. I still went to seminars. I still called and talked to people that I knew. I still wanted to know the newer lifters. But I look back at my career and there was definitely during my period where it was like get bigger, as big and strong as you can get. And it was like, be a super heavyweight, embrace it. Like just who cares if you got to put, once you're at the highest level, if you got to put on 20 pounds to put 10 pounds on your squat, do it. And, we had super heavyweights that couldn't hardly walk through the airport without resting. And and I was always in pretty good shape compared. And I use this say, like, I would compare myself. Like, find me another almost 400-pound guy that can do this. Well, that's not really the best bar to compare yourself to, But I was fooling myself. And I look back now and I go, man, if we would have been in better shape, I think we would have been stronger. Even if it meant, like, because with the narcolepsy, insomnia, and all that stuff, which was kind of out of control at the time, I kind of was like, I'm always worried about training and the frequency was already low, but it was like, if I would have taken a little more time to rest and do more GPP work, I think in the long run, it would have been way better for me and I could have been stronger. And then I look at some of the guys now, you look at guys like, John Hack or Yuri Belkin or that new Colton kid from, I think he's
Colton out of Australia.
Yeah, is that where he's from? Like, I'm like, oh my God, like these guys are in shape and they're beasts. Like these guys are doing insane numbers. Maybe there's something to being in shape where we were I'm not saying we were complete fat asses, but I was kind of fat, like 400 pounds. Like, did it really benefit me to carry that extra weight,
Yeah. Did you get to 400 pounds, Chad?
My very heavy, I actually kick myself for this. This is how messed up my thinking is. I think it was APF seniors in Detroit. I weighed in at 397.
Wow.
And I thought, you know what? I should have went down to gallon of milk just so I could hit that 400 barrier.
Yeah. I don't think I could put on size. I put on probably more size at one point than I was strong per se, but my goal was always I wanted to total 2,000. I had goals and I didn't even approach. I should have totaled 2,200 to be honest with you, but I don't, hindsight's wasted on, hindsight is what it is, but like you were saying earlier, you look back and the mistakes you made, but I did a lot of stuff right. And one of the things I never did was I never ate crappy, like I would advise, and it's so much easier now to eat, not only is there meal prep services and stuff. So like I really always had, but by the time, the year I graduated high school in 86, that was like the last year, my senior high school is last year I ate crappy. I had a lot of good family food. I had like a girlfriend at the time. His mom cooked great. And then I soon thereafter went to work at GNC when I was in college.
Mm-hmm.
And I could get anything I wanted there. And there was a time GNC also sold some foods like Power Pasta and stuff, let alone the protein powders and the liver tablets and the stuff I do believe in. But like, as much as I love lifting the most, but like what you were saying, I was just never going to just I never added bad calories if you will, like when, like, like
I did.
as you,
I
yeah,
remember
5%.
growing like when Dave Tate was really like I would say the closest thing I had to a mentor.
Uh-huh.
Um, and Dave at the time, it's like, dude, get bigger, get stronger, stronger, bigger is stronger. Just keep getting bigger, and like eating box of Pop-Tarts. And I remember Dave telling me one time, like, you got to get a whole bunch of packets of mayonnaise and go get you some sausage biscuits or egg McMuffins. And he's like, put a package of mayonnaise on each bite of that McMuffin. Like, you got to get some calories up.
So working at the time when I started my federal career, I started with the Department of Justice, and they had certain standards. Like, so if you were under age 40, every 3 years you had to go for a mandatory physical.
Yeah.
So they would do blood work and stuff. So like, that means I had my first one in 91. Then I had one in 94. 97 I had one, and then in 2000. So my biggest period of time, I didn't have a physical. So I had a personal physician that took care of me, kept me healthy. But the government they were looking at us. If I had high cholesterol or I had any other issues, they could red flag you, and you could have gotten in trouble. So I was just determined to do my career, do it the right way, and not divorce myself totally from health. And I love to eat, Chad. Like, I absolutely love. I have fun. I'm sure you can think back to like how you used to eat to get so big. Like,
I actually don't like eating because of that. I had
like
I had so many years of forcing down food.
Okay.
That I just still to this day, there's certain things I get kind of excited about. My mom makes like a homemade pizza and chili and stuff, but
Nice.
like I've just spent so much time forcing down so much food. And like you, I always, I got my blood work checked, and it was always like, okay, it's anything that's wrong is like really minimal. And I was like, I still went hiking, I still did all this stuff, but it's like, me hiking up a hill, it sounded like I don't even know what, like sucking air, but I would still do it. And a lot of the guys that hung out with me that also hung out with other supers couldn't believe the stuff that I was still doing. But I mean, I was not in like still, yeah, okay. I was in good shape for a big guy, which is not really good shape.
Okay. Like I'm always fascinated in like I graduated high school. I was about 215 and I graduated. I turned 18 in April, graduated in May, and I was about 215. And by the end of that summer, I gained a lot of muscle that first summer, all natural. I didn't use any substances till I moved to California and was on my own dime and had my own money and legally worked with a doctor. So, like, my point is, how big were you when you graduated high school?
I graduated high school at 270, but I put a bunch of weight on for like my senior year of football, and then I kept it on for throwing.
Mm-hmm.
And then lifting, after I had to quit throwing in college, my natural body weight was anywhere from 220 to about 265, 270. And I would just kind of fluctuate in between there all the time. And then, but even when at Detroit, when I weighed 397, I felt like crap, man. And I mean, I lifted good. I think I squatted 1,050 something. I benched 7 something and pulled 7 something. But I just felt like crap. So I said, you know what? Maybe this is too much. Maybe I put weight on too fast, or my body doesn't like it, or whatever. And I dropped back down to about 385. At 385, I felt good and I was strong. But even then, after a competition, I would drop down to 360 and then be back to 385 by the next meet.
Okay. Like for me, all right, that's very interesting. So for me, my goal, my senior year of high school, when all my buddies, because in Massachusetts, I had a real tight crew. And it's sad, like we graduated and we're having a great summer. And then everybody took off. Like everybody went to colleges all around the state, not the state, like the country. Mm-hmm. So all my crew was gone. I remember I was kind of sad, like melancholy. Now I stayed in Massachusetts to go to college, and I had some friends still, but like all my buddies left, my training partners. I was all sad. They went to play sports other places. So I came home and I was bummed out. They were all gone. It was September. and I got PLUSA in the mail. It was the double senior issue, right? And it was the senior nationals. And I'm reading that and I go, that's my goal. So that would have been September of 86.
Mm-hmm.
So the first time I qualified and made the senior nationals was, by the time I did, was 12 years later, because I became a college graduate and in law enforcement. So that was, they have you running in the academy and stuff.
Yeah.
So I went, so it took like 12 years. It probably would have taken me a straight 8 if I just focused on that goal of going to the seniors solely. So my point of that is what year did you graduate high school? And then what year did you make your first time become an elite lifter? What was the time frame?
I graduated high school in 1990. I did my first bench meet in 97. I did my first 3-lift meet in 99. And that's when I got serious. In 99, I said, I think I can do pretty good at this. And then I think we did APF seniors in Universal City. Weren't you there at that one too?
Yeah, well, the first meet that we did 2 meets together. The first meet we did was, remember going into that meet was somebody ran the APF Cal States on March 1st, 2003 in Sacramento. So I came up to do that, to put a qualifying total together. And you were at that meet. And there was a problem with your squat. Somebody, I don't know if it was your dad. I was like, something happened and the Ikes, somebody was raising some hell, and I'm sure it was justified. And I was like in my own world.
I actually remember that. I think I did like 3 900 squats, and the head judge kept red lighting me on depth. And eventually my dad went up and he goes, you know what? I know you're the judge, but I don't think you're a very good judge. I just want you to know that. And then walked away, and then the judge got pissed off and went and talked to my dad. And that was like, he said something and my dad blew up, and I was like, hey, all right, this, whatever, dude, it's over. Like, I don't even give a shit.
Yeah.
That was the APF, California State meet or something like that.
It was, yeah. I had been, by that point, I'd lived in California since 91. I'd lived there 12 years. I'd never been to Sacramento. There wasn't a powerlifting scene up there. There really wasn't anything north of.
Well, there actually was back then. You had Diablo Barbell, and I can't remember if Mark started his thing by then or if it was later. But because there wasn't anything really in northern Nevada, so we were coming over here to we were coming over to Sacramento a lot. And there was Jody Woods was putting on, I think, Wabdell meets, and was that Garcia that was put on that APF one. I mean, there was actually, for us, California was more of a powerlifting deal than Reno was.
Yeah, I had never been to, I still to this day haven't been to Reno. I've lifted in Vegas because they'd have big meets in Vegas, but there was so much powerlifting in Southern California. And then Bob Packer became APF state chair, but I don't know who ran that meet. And
I used to go to Packers meets was that in Fresno? No.
Yes.
Was it in Fresno? Because he had some at there was an old YMCA or something.
On Blackstone Ave or something. Oh yeah, no AC.
I did shit. We did a couple there. Those are always fun meets. And then the guys from Diablo Barbell, I got to be friends with all those guys. Because I would come over by myself, and I'm like, well, I hope there's somebody there that can kind of help me a little bit. If not, I'll just figure it out.
Yeah, I liked, you'd go to a meet, and that's why there's no other sporting event called a meet, really, because you literally get together and meet new friends, see old friends, talk training. You should, if you're new to powerlifting and watching this, go to a meet and be friendly and get along. And if you're there to lift, get your business done. But if you don't meet people, you're doing it wrong.
Yeah.
But I met some of those Diablo guys because they were out of Concord.
Yeah.
Like Garrett, and was there a Ted?
Yeah, Garrett and Ted started it.
Good dudes.
Yeah.
Because we're all from the same cloth. But don't forget though, Chad, you're forgetting at that APF California State meet, I was getting ready. I hadn't had an official 800 squat on the books, right? And then, do you remember the monolift broke?
Yes, I do remember that.
Much tension. I waited a half hour between that meet was a crap show. I mean, it really was. That guy, I don't think ever ran a meet again. And not to make fun of it, I saved a few. I have the medal. That was the first time I ever got a medal, and it was a bear. And it's supposed to be a brown bear, but right. I didn't know what bears were until I got online, and then I Googled it one time, and I said, "Oh yeah, I can appreciate.
I never even put those two together until you just said that now. I always thought, oh, it's the California state. Isn't that like the animal of California?
Yeah.
You know what's funny is even in that meet, I think I ended up bombing in the squat, but I entered the bench only. So I got best lifter and bench only, and the prize was they made me a Letterman jacket, which I thought, dude, that's kind of cool. And I still have that jacket. And it has my name, and I think it was only like 600 pounds or something, but it's Chad Ike, 600-pound best lifter, and it's got a big embroidered thing on the back and stuff. And I was like, dude, that's kind of one of the coolest like awards I've gotten.
Yeah, that's neat. Yeah, I didn't know that. I was just there to hit a total because by March of 2003, my wife was pregnant with twins, and I had stopped doing strongman because I'm like, well, I still need an avenue because strongman was too grueling, to be honest with you, and it really hadn't taken off. And I'm like, man, I knew the seniors were going to be at Universal Studios, like you referenced. I'm like, man, I can do those. And then my twins were due in July, and the seniors was in June. I go, man, just get me through this. And I'm still, and my life was pretty busy after 9/11 with law enforcement because I was on task force cracking down on immigration fraud, people that were in this country illegally, that including people, the type of people that hijacked those planes. So I was super busy. But yeah, that seniors is, I'm biased, but that was one of the greatest seniors I think of all time. It was because it's changed now.
You look at the guys that were there. Gary Frank, Josh Bryant, Billy Mimmo, I think was there. Brent Mikesel was there. Like, dude, there was a lot of really awesome lifters.
Owen Bassan
was there, he's back lifting again and still freaky, just crazy strong. And Mendelson was there, and like, especially for me, because that was like the first big meet I went to. And it was just like, holy shit, like this is crazy. And somehow I managed to take second place, which I was just like, I'm normally one of those, I want first place kind of guys, but I'm like, holy shit, I got second. And I'm like, I got lucky and I don't care. I'll take it.
Yeah. And that seniors that's the one, Scott Mendes is my friend. That was the first official 800-pound bench.
Yeah.
And he smoked it because they had a bench only division for that. And remember, I hope he's okay to this day, but man, remember Ed Russ squatted over 1,000, but then went down hard.
Yes. That was, I forgot about that. Cause I met, I think Mark Swank was there and Ed Russ was there. And that was just watching, because I went up to, because those two were friends, I believe. And I watched Ed Russ's first squat, and I was just like, I've never seen anyone stand up with 1,000 pounds, especially he stood up with it like it was nothing. Like I was so absolutely amazed. And I remember talking to Mark, and he's like, dude, just go talk to Ed. And I was like, okay, cool. But I knew he had another squat, and then so I was out watching when he went down, and I'm like, oh my God, like you could just see his ankle and that was so horrible.
Yeah.
And actually the ironic thing is I tried that 1,000, I think it was 1,053. And I went and did that at AWPC Worlds and also crashed with it.
Wow.
And it was like, man, there's something about that number, I think, or something, because we basically look exactly the same. Luckily, I spend a lot of time stretching, so I walked away from mine, and actually I finished the meet and everything, just breaking like AWPC. I broke all the AWPC records, I think, in that meet. But yeah, nice. That was too bad, man, because Ed's such a nice guy. I still talk to him every now and then on Instagram and stuff, and damn, he was so strong, man. Whew.
Yeah. There was just I'm biased because I was part of it, and I ended up coming in 5th in the 308s. But there's something to be said about when you're in that environment and everybody's just
John Grove wasn't John Grove at that one too?
I'm sure he was, and Billy Mimnaw's training partner Ron Dayton was super strong in the 75s.
There was just so many people at that meet, like. When you look back.
And that was like the last big powerlifting meet I did and I knew after that, I said, man, when my twins come, we left that meet, and I had told, I lived in Orange County, and my wife was there. Well, I didn't know my wife was going. I'm like, hey, you got twins on board, stay home. Right. So I'm coming out for my opening squat and I look, and pro strongman Charlie Captor? He's like 6'10", like
I know the
six.
name.
Yeah, he's my friend. Cause I was training strongman with those guys sometimes too. So I come out for my opening squat from the back and there's my son's on his shoulders, my 2.5-year-old Louis. And there's my wife. And I'm like, oh. So I say that now because, I ended up going, I went, I had a good day. I totaled over 2,000 at that meet, but and I'm like, hon, you don't need rest and stuff. And anyways, we left that meet was Sunday. We drove home to Orange County and she went in for a doctor's checkup the next day. And they're like, oh my God, she was on bed rest in the hospital for the next month while the babies came. And I'm like, ugh. In retrospect, I'm like, you should have just stayed home, but it all worked out, but it was precarious time. But that meet was amazing. The talent that was there just to be, my thing was I always wanted to lift at the seniors. That was the third time I did the seniors, and they were all special. The first one in Chicago's, but that one in LA was just different.
Yeah.
It was and it was also obviously kind of the beginning of your trajectory as well. As that I after you squat, you have all your gear, and I walked it out to the parking lot to get some fresh air and throw that in because you don't need all that squat gear. And then I passed Gary Frank, and he had bombed in the squat, and he'd been training Josh, and he's like, I just saw him, he came talk to me for a second, and I said, hey, he goes, man, I'll be back. He's like, I'm gonna hit 2,500 because he hadn't. He had already done that, but he was like, he just jumped in his Cadillac and left, and soon thereafter totaled up to almost 2,850. Like he went
up to, I think he peaked at 2,805. I think.
Yeah, he was.
Which is crazy because he broke it at like 24, 20. I think it was 25. He broke it, and he just kept leading all the way up till eventually I did 2,805, and then I think Andy came right behind him. But yeah, it was that dude was a strong dude too, man. Just strong.
Yeah, very strong, very humble, very just so well balanced in all the lifts, and he was the. I
honestly don't even know what I totaled at that meet.
Well, fortunately, I won't deviate. But if anybody's watching this, if you're ever interested in what people have lifted, because openpowerlifting.org is your friend. If you meet Joe Smith, or Joe Smith's a common name, if you meet Paul Leonard and go, hey, Paul Leonard said he lifted this. If you look at Open Powerlifting, they definitely have captured my best lifts. Not all of them in terms of my history of lifting, but and if I was to look up Chad Ikes, they're really good over there of maintaining.
They're pretty good. There's a lot of I have a lot of meets that aren't on there.
Mm-hmm.
But overall, I think they're pretty good. And I heard they're trying to go through like the old powerlifting USAs and like re-enter in like, all the old competitions and stuff. I mean, how can they go back that far,
Well,
with guys like us? Like, was that 2003? Was that Universal Studios?
Yes, it was.
Yeah, so here it is. I did 903. I missed 931. Wow, my bench was still shitty back then. I did 551, missed 580 or 578. And I pulled 705. And I think that's the meet where I pulled 749, but my grip, I hooked my briefs. And so my hand was trying to open. So I'm like, well, maybe I can just stop here and fake it that I'm like locked out. And the judge just caught me. So I totaled 2160 there.
Nice.
Yeah, that was still pretty. I was only 31. That's pretty new for my career in powerlifting at that meet. Because I had been lifting I had been competing since 97. So.
And 2160 in 03.
Like
so
years.
When did you hit? So you did that. See, I went to and handled Art LeBert at the first WPO, but I never lifted at the WPO. I wasn't strong enough or in it. In 2000, when I went to the initial one down in Orlando, Art LeBert paid for me to go down and handle him. So I went to that initial one, and that was it. I never got a chance, and I never went to one. I was by 03. after the twins came in '04, then I relocated to Dallas and to focus on my career and family more. But so I didn't get any of those WPO years, just seeing what was on the internet and stuff. So when did your WPO career begin, Chad?
I think I missed the first one or two WPOs. I think I only have two WPO finals, and then I have two or three WPO semifinals, I believe. So I was in like '05. I was in '06. I'm looking at Powerlifting Watch right now. Or open powerlifting. I mean, sorry.
Sure.
So it was '06 and '07. I was in the finals. And
right.
then that was about my sleep got really bad. So I didn't do after, like, I had to back off and get my shit together. So like my last big meet was '09. And that was like the power, or '08 or something. The one Power Station Pro-Am where I did a 1221 squat, but they called me on depth. That was like my last big one. And I think that was '08.
Now, I think that I'm pretty sure the WPO is back in some form, but like the WPO, I went to the first one in May of 2000 down in Florida, like I referenced, but you said you were in it to '07, but I think by '07 or '08, I think by '08, the WPO was done. It was no longer E. Arnold, and it was Kieran Kidder, who I competed against as a junior lifter in New England. So I know Kieran a little bit, but he was the president, and he really tried to make a professional league, and for whatever reason, it didn't. It didn't last much past 7 or 8 years. And I know it's back now, but it's different. So, but it was good. You got, like, cause as a fan, I'm a fan obviously of all this stuff. So like to see, like, when they went to just a few weight divisions and like Vogapool and Ano Turtinen and Andy and Bo Moore.
I was like so grateful. I look back now and I'm so grateful that I was able to lift during those years. Because you said there was just so many cool people in so many different weight classes. Like, who was like one of the Schwab,
Brian Schwab out of Orlando.
Yeah, Brian Schwab, dude. That dude was so impressive, man. And I always felt bad because the first day of the WPO never really had the fans packed like the big guys would. But I'm like, dude, those guys were strong as shit, man.
Yeah,
you know, and then like,
what's his name? Ashton Kutcher.
Yeah, Kutcher was there, and I mean,
Lord.
Kroc was there, and I mean, it was just like, dude, it was just, those meets were just crazy, like just the personalities and the quality of lifters, and like I feel like I was very fortunate to kind of at my peak during those years. It was just nuts. And then I mean, Andy, I remember, and the people I lifted with, like, dude, the super heavies were stacked, man. It was crazy.
Yeah, that really was the golden age of supportive gear APF/WPO lifting. It just was.
And I mean, not to mention, I didn't even mention Donnie. Like, me and Donnie traded the WPO bench record back and forth a few times, and then like after '08, he just went crazy, and like his total went through the roof.
Yeah, I've never. We trade messages all the time and in DMs and stuff. I've yet to meet Donnie. He's invited me over. I want to go check out his compound and stuff and so forth. And like, I tell Donnie, like, I don't know if I'll get him over, like, you know, cause I, on the side, if you will, I broadcast, and I don't have any of that equipment, but the guy I broadcast with, Sean Christ, he's got cameras and he films stuff. He's a film student out here. Retired Marine, 3-time combat veteran, but he's got the cameras and stuff. Because I tell Donnie, I say, Donnie, you got a movie. You literally have a documentary in that, like, and I'm always pressing Donnie, like, you should really shoot a movie, because it would help a lot of people in that, like, when he references what he did for his squat, what he did the day after, what he did, you know what I'm saying? Like,
well, he was doing a lot of interesting stuff, like I talked about earlier with
kettlebells.
The super heavyweights were getting out of shape. I mean, let's face it, we were just so focused on lift heavy, eat and sleep. You know, rest. Don't spend any energy if you're not lifting heavy. Donnie was like, no, I'm going to do kettlebells. And Donnie was doing more GPP work, and he was doing all this other stuff. And
Right.
I've asked Donnie a couple times to be on here, and he's like, dude, I don't do podcasts anymore. I'm like, come on. But yeah, you know what I think would be funny? I have this idea. I don't have the financial means probably, but to get someone, and I of course think I'm kind of funny, so I think I would be good, but you know, you get a crew and you travel around and go, hey, we're going to go visit Donnie Thompson, and we're going to film, and we're going to hang out and for a couple of days, and we're going to train, and we're going to go to eat, and we're going to do, you know, if it's somebody like, if somebody has a habit, you know, if you find a guy that hunts or something, well, maybe go shooting when you're with them and just film all of that and cut it into like a, you know, a program or something. Because I've always been fascinated with when I get to meet people to know, you know, more about them, and you start hearing stories about them and stuff. And like one of the coolest people I met was Chuck Vogelpool, and I always heard these stories of how crazy he is, and I love crazy people anyway. So when I first met him, I'm like, oh, dude, Chuck's awesome, man. This guy's great, you know. And you hear stories, and you're just talking to him, and you know, you find out more about him and stuff. That was one of the funnest things for me.
Yeah, I'm like you. I could totally go for a show like that. I liked it a couple years ago when the History Channel did the show with Eddie Hall, Brian Shaw, Nick Best, and Robert Oberst.
Yeah.
And, you know, they went out and they showed them, you know, they went to Paul Anderson's home and stuff. To me, that's fascinating. And yeah, no, I agree with you. I think that once I look back, I was always interested, and I had a soft spot in my heart for anybody that lifted the best they could, and at the same time had like a job and a family.
Yeah,
you know, because it's just not easy balancing all that, to be honest with you.
I had even with this podcast, like I like talking to you about your past and especially your job, because I think your job's pretty interesting. You know, and I had John Anderson and Terry Anderson on a couple episodes back, you know, and I didn't know they ride dirt bikes, and they go out to like an actual track, and he's like jumping jumps and shit. And I thought, dude, that's cool. This guy's huge, yoked out, strong man, wrestler, bodybuilder, and like he likes riding dirt bikes. That's fascinating to me.
Yeah, I met John only once. We're online friends, but when I ran California's Strongest Man in 2003, I don't know how he got there or who invited him, but he showed up and helped us judge. He was it's before he got married. He was dating Shannon Hartnett, and Ode Hagen showed up, and a lot of people. That was at March Air Force Base in Riverside, but I don't know who reached out to him, but he showed up, and I mean, yeah, I that was the first time I ever saw a pro strongman built like that, because I'd seen a lot of bodybuilders.
Yeah, no, he's got traps like coming out his ears. They're amazing.
Yeah, just he's such a well built, and he's got that killer voice. I always wish I had a deeper voice. You know what I'm saying? He's so impressive. But yeah, I'm always interested to find out, you know, what people were like behind the scenes. Like when I was in, I have a Dodge Charger Hemi, right? It's like, so the first year actually they made the 4 doors in 2006, and I still drive it. I love it. It's a great car. But like when I was back at Westside this year, like they showed me in the parking lot where Louis used to burn out his Hellcat.
Yeah.
That's bad. Stories like that make me laugh. And Louis had like drag race cars and stuff. Mm-hmm. And
see, I didn't know he had like drag race cars and stuff. That's interesting.
Yeah. I didn't see any. I mean, it's just the more you find out, the more it's fascinating.
Human power and motor power, same thing.
Yeah. It's like my friend Jay Pritchett out here. He like, I'm not into there's sprint cars and stuff, and like he used to do it, and he posts pictures occasionally, but I guess he got too big. He doesn't. I
was gonna say, how the hell does he get in a sprint car? Those are pretty little.
Yeah. He's Tucson has a drag strip, so it's been a while. But I used to go there with my kids. I just grab them because it's $5, and I like the amateur night, Friday nights. You can just get on there. They give you a basic safety check. You could take the family cruiser out. You know, it's kind of, I can appreciate that. I know Jerry was at NASCAR in Phoenix last week because he posted. I'm not a NASCAR guy, to be honest with you, but I can appreciate anybody's interest. You know
I
what I'm
don't
saying?
know.
It always does interest me.
I had the opportunity to go to the Brickyard 400 one time, and
Uh-huh.
I jumped at it because I'm more of a like road racing and especially
Okay.
motorcycles.
Gotcha.
But I'm like, dude, it's the Brickyard. Like, I gotta go, and it was absolutely worth every second because until you've actually been there, you don't get it, man. Like, you don't get how loud those cars are and how powerful they are, and like, just if you really want to watch the race, being there kind of sucks because you're just like, whoa, 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 whoa. Okay, well, let's chill out till they come back, and then whoa, 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 whoa. But I mean, to be there in person and get as close to the cars as you can is absolutely amazing.
Yeah, yeah. There's a lot to be. I know what you're saying. Not having experienced that, but in other things, like in times I've been up close to watch professional boxing,
Mm-hmm.
or even, I mean, even I've had the pleasure of being up close to some pro football and some college football, real close on the sidelines. You're like, oh my, people don't understand the violence and the collisions, and
Yeah,
you know,
how hard people are actually hitting.
yeah, or a major league pitch, for example. It looks on TV. Why can't they hit that?
Yeah. Stand even
Well,
somewhere remotely close to the plate when that ball's coming at 97 miles an hour.
or even like, they're a dynasty out here. So like my boys, I have two boys and a girl. So I've always, any sports stuff I would always take them to, and like University of Arizona softball is like multiple time world. They're like national champions. Like,
Mm-hmm.
have you ever seen how fast they can pitch? Like you get up close to it. It's only 60.
Underhand.
Oh yeah. Like,
How the hell do they do that?
And these girls are amazing, and I'm like, oh my goodness, I'd strike out easily. Like I love going to see all sports. I can appreciate it, and yeah.
When I was doing more photography, I love trains for some reason. I always have,
Mm-hmm.
and so we have this canyon where the Truckee River is, by the highway, and there's a train track that runs all the way up there. And so I would go out and do photography, and I'm like, I know this shot. Like, I can see the shot in my mind. I just got to take the picture.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm like right on the end of the tracks, like right on the beginning of a bridge. And I mean, how the earth actually shakes and the noise. And like, it's just like the whole time I'm just filled with adrenaline, laughing, just trying to keep my camera steady on my tripod. Because the power is just like, that's unbelievable. Like, that's exhilarating as hell.
Yeah, yeah. I don't know if it's still a thing, but like when I got into strongman, the first time I had hurt my knee in powerlifting, so I met up with some Charlie Captor and Kevin Kinsey had been a high-level Highland Games athlete, and they go, "Hey, there's a strongman coming up," and it was going to be held at Jamestown. It's called Jamestown and Railtown Days up in Northern California, but it's an Old West setting where they had filmed a lot of the Westerns. And growing up in Boston, I didn't like Westerns, but my dad loved them, God rest his soul. So like the first time I did a strongman contest, I got to pull a 66,000 pound locomotive. When we deadlifted a train axle.
Yeah.
And I got to run with a 300-pound anvil. I'd never picked up an anvil before, and but it was all railroad themed. And I still think that's an open museum, Chad. I'll look for that, and I'll send you it offline. I'll send you that if that still exists, because if you're ever going through that neck of the woods, that place is cool.
Yeah, it sounds fun.
I
really used to love when they would do the old strongmans and they would kind of theme them around wherever they were doing it. I always thought that was cool.
Yeah, and that leads to, because powerlifting used to be on mainstream TV, but when you see like the weights you lifted, or nowadays like even like a Ray Williams or somebody like Oliveira, these ridiculous, like when they have all those little red elite goes on or whatever, like the average person can't really discern how heavy that is. But when you see someone lift a car or move a train or bring a semi, that the appeal of strongman is that it's gripping, and the aura of it. You know what I'm saying? It's always going to be.
Well, it's a little more relatable. You see you know the weight that's on the bar, but it doesn't look that different than another weight on the bar. But when you're lifting a car or pulling a train, you're like, holy shit, they just pulled an airplane. Like, I know that airplane's heavy as hell.
Yes. Yeah, yeah, and they've really the sport really took off in the United States because again, Willie Wessels runs USS. He's my good friend. Like it was last year he passed over 1,000 shows that he sanctioned, and there's other strongman federations. I'm biased to his, but there's probably been
Willie was strong as shit in his own right.
Oh yeah, and he still is. He loves when you're around him. He loves to train. He lives it. He's in his early 60s, but so there's probably been right under 2,000 official sanctioned strongman contests in the United States in the last 20 years, which is really cool. It's cool how that sport's grown. And as it's grown, more an eye to safety, because when I did it, we were flipping 800, 900-pound tires, and there was some accident. It's frightening. Somebody goes down or more so tears a bicep because they've never seen that tire. They grabbed it in the heat of the moment. They grabbed it the wrong way. And so the sport's morphed, and the sport's morphed, and it's a lot safer. And again, think about like when you and I started lifting, whatever town you were in, there was only one gym, if not one gym, one good garage that did good powerlifting. Now, I don't know what Pahrumps like, but like you said, in Vegas, there's probably 10 good spots you could train at if you were so inclined, right? Here in Tucson, I've been here 15 plus years. When I first got to town, there wasn't even a good gym. Now we have about 8 or 10 places you could definitely train at that have from Tucson Strength.
I mean, there was a time where if you look back in strongman and you're like, hey, they're doing a 300-pound Atlas stone. Now guys are doing 500-pound Atlas stones. But at that time, nobody had them to train with.
That's right.
Like nobody had a steel log. You had to train with weights or whatever you could come up with, go to the event, and then like now I have to perform with this implement I haven't trained. And now people have much easier access to it. And the skill, there is skill. I still remember the first time I trained with Mark Philippi and Kevin Mitchell. And like I picked up a stone and I'm like, oh my God, it's heavy as shit. And I think Mark was like, yeah, if you do it again, you're probably going to rip your bicep off. Here's how you pick up a stone. And I was like, oh, okay, well, that's a whole lot easier now. There's still, there's a lot of skill level to strongman that I think some people kind of miss.
Yes. Yeah, for sure. You're right. The equipment, I living in Orange County back then. And when I got into it in 2000, we used to go to a furniture store that had furniture, indoor and outdoor furnishings that was off the 55 freeway, a little north of Costa Mesa. And they had these huge rocks that were brought in from Mexico as landscape items. But we'd bring our bathroom scale and weigh them. It was like a comedy of errors, so we'd end up breaking the scale. That's where we got our 380-pound rock from.
I'm just imagining one of them glass scales just going...
Oops. We're trying to lower it. And oops. I mean, we broke a couple scales. The people there would laugh, and then we'd buying it, then try to get it in the truck.
Yeah.
Right. It was now. Yeah. It's changed. But it's so much for the better. When I went back to be on Under the Bar, and I again bumming around Columbus, Ohio in October, it was beautiful because I left Tucson. We were still in 100-degree weather all summer, but like I went to Maine Rogue because you make so much good time going around that city. Have you been to Maine Rogue?
No.
Yeah, you go there and it's like you almost will salivate at the it's just the showroom is awesome and it's all open. You can walk in there. They have the Dinny stones there. Mm-hmm. They have the barbell that Alexei cleaned 500 pounds in 1970 in Columbus.
Really?
It's like a museum too, Chad. And it's a gym. Oh my God. Yeah. I will send you the clip because I posted I taped like 5 minutes for my Instagram. And then like, it's just, it literally is, you could see why it's $1 billion enterprise, and any piece of equipment you could want is there. And I highly recommend anybody go check out Maine Rogue. It's amazing.
Well, that's one of the other things why I wanted to talk to you and have you on again too, is I know you're kind of a historian of strength history. And I'm amazed at how many, when I talk to younger strength athletes, they don't really have any idea who these older guys are. And I don't think they understand how strong the older guys were, back in the day. And it's just, even when I started, There's a lot of guys, like we even spoke about Anthony Clark and Odie Wilson, who I never got to meet, which I wish I could have met. But I knew about these guys, and I looked up, Lewis Sear and the really old guys. And I still to this day love hearing stories about them and again, wondering about them. And, we talked a little bit about John Cole earlier, I just remember being a kid watching him and the way he had his little tight beard and his goatee. And you're just like, dude, this guy just looks like a badass, man. I like this dude.
Yeah. John Cole was definitely special. There's powerlifting in the mid 80s became multiple federations for not always for the better, but when there was just one sport of powerlifting under the AAU umbrella, which controlled bodybuilding back then, controlled in the late 60s, we're talking, because powerlifting, the first national championships, I think, was 64. The first worlds was 72. So powerlifting was under the auspices of the AAU until I want to think the 70s. But yeah, John Cole was, you look at, for the fact that he held the all-time total record, which would be the best official combined power lifts and Olympic lifts. He held that for 25 years. And he had bulked up because he wasn't a big guy. John had a size 10 foot. And
that's actually kind of small.
Pretty small guy. And I guess he was about 5. I never had the pleasure, which is sad. I never met him. He passed away in 2013 in his early 70s. But in talking to people, they'll all reference how people that had trained with him, his training partner, Brick Darrow, still has Thorbeck's gym open in Phoenix. And meeting people that had trained with him or influenced by him and known him. They'll talk about how special he was. But so to have the all-time super total record for 25 years from 72 until 97, the only one that broke it was Mark Henry, when Mark Henry went from powerlifting to Olympic lifting. But John did his
Mark
best.
Mark Henry was 400
pounds. And John Cole did his best Olympic lifting at 255 pounds. So he was athletic. And his best powerlifting at 282. So, I mean, to me, there's almost no comparison.
Even in what did we say in 72? He did like a 900 squat, a 570 something bench, and like an 850 deadlift.
Yeah, when he
that's like a 2,300 pound total, and that's 53 years ago.
Yeah, his best powerlifting total was in October at the Arizona States in October of 72. He went 905. 585, 885. So he did 2370 at 280 pounds.
And that's there was no lifting gear in 72, right?
There was a belt and there was knee wraps, and you could put your when that it was ace bandages you could put on your knee, but you could also put them on your elbows. Was legal to bench.
Yeah.
And back then,
still, you would bench those weren't like the wraps today that like they're nothing compared to that. Nothing.
Yeah, no. If given a good pair of the knee wraps that I was most familiar with from an Inzer or a Titan or the different brands now just around your knees. I mean, I have no doubt. And if any listening to this, my Instagram, my YouTube channel, Paul L. P Leonard 71. If you just look at Paul L. and put in John Cole, look at his squats. I have listed those 3 squats. Posted those 3 squats in 1 2-minute clip. So he opens up at 820, goes 885 for the 885 was the all-time world record. Once he sets that, then he breaks it with 905. And you'll see back then, if you broke the all-time record in something, they would bring the bar over to a scale and weigh it.
Really?
Well, you would just cool. It's right on the footage with any of the lifts. So, John was extremely one of the most, to me, he's the strongest man under 300 pounds that ever lived by far. I mean, it's the super total record. He was an All-American in the discus. He was he was a strength coach extraordinaire for ASU. He built that program up, and go on. I'm sorry.
I heard a story one time, and I don't know if it's true or not, but I heard a story that he was like, he wanted to beat Paul Anderson's, what did they call it, the backlift record or whatever. He would basically get under a table and lift the table.
Mm-hmm.
And they said Paul Anderson did like 5,000 pounds or something like that. And I heard Cole wanted to beat it, so he had this metal table made up. and the table was a couple 1,000 pounds or something. And he went and lifted that, and he's like, "No, nah, that record's bullshit." He goes, "There's no way." And so like he never ended up going for it, but it was like, that record, if I remember correctly, was basically the amount was like, oh, well, we see a safe in the picture and we see this and we see this. So it's probably weighs this, and it wasn't really like official.
Yeah. I have no doubt that Paul Anderson was obviously super, super physiologically strong, especially in the squat.
Mm-hmm.
That's without, from pictures you see, and there's a YouTube documentary, and I have the VHS tape from the early 90s of The Mightiest Minister. So if you can look at that, make up your own decisions how strong he was in the squat. But what happened was, I don't know who started it, but in the strength and health and muscular development empire in the early 70s, as they were promoting powerlifting and just writing, muscular development used to write the results of the powerlifting nationals and the powerlifting worlds. It came in 72 after Cole hit his big lifts, because after he did those lifts in October that I mentioned to you, he did those at the Arizona States. But in July, late July of 72, he went to the senior national powerlifting champions in Denver. So not in his own backyard. And I think he totaled 2,300 there, something like he went 865, 555, 865 and Perry Rader, who was the founder of Ironman magazine, wrote in his magazine, he said, "This is the strongest man in the world right now." Kind of just put it out there. So Perry Rader was very much an objective person, and his magazine was looked at as the standard. So then the Hoffman magazines kind of jumped on that and said, "Oh, wait a minute. Well, Paul Anderson," and they had an affiliation with Terry Todd at the time.
Mm-hmm.
Paul Anderson's camp, and Terry Todd said, "Oh, Cole's not the strongest." So they had said, "We're going to have a challenge where they both meet in a competition to settle this." So it was promoted in those magazines for months throughout the year of 72, and then it never materialized. And so the final word on that really was when Cole was on the cover of Powerlifting USA in 94, when he was mulling a comeback, and Powerlifting USA wrote an article with him, like Glossenburner said, "What was about this with you and Paul Anderson's challenge?" And Cole went on record saying, "I respect Paul immeasurably," because Paul had died by then. Paul died in the summer of 94.
Mm-hmm.
And he said, "We respected each other, but it was promoted by somebody's at the magazines. It wasn't to happen." So it just, unfortunately, it didn't happen. But to be realistic, at that point, there's no way that Anderson could have touched Cole in the 3 lifts, because Anderson had never documented pulling a full deadlift. I don't know how his grip was, and he wasn't a bench presser per se. So, I mean, I don't think he wins that, but regardless, they're both legends, and they both did so much. Paul Anderson's youth home, that's an institution that continues to this day to help underprivileged children and people that need it. So it's, it is what it is. And it just interesting times, very interesting times.
Yeah, I don't think you can ever take away, when you have those rivalries, I don't think you can ever take anything away from anybody. If you were one of the best in your time, you're one of the best in your time. Like, that's just the way it is to me.
Yeah, it's like, if you think back what we were saying about a half hour ago, I mean, think of the energy that was in that warm-up room and the seniors we did in 03,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like, if you ever, and you've experienced this, if when you got to be a certain level of strength, when I was getting up to the mid 7s in the squat, if I went to a meet, like the last big squat was 575, and then it jumped to me, like, there wasn't as much energy. I don't know how to say that. Like, if you want to be it, you got to see it.
Yeah.
And when you're there and you see like everybody moving weight, you're like, wow, that's so, like, I never had anything but respect from it. They were considered my peers. I didn't have rivals. I mean, did I want to place the top 100 lifts? I wanted to win everything I lifted in, but I had so much respect. The person that was lifting against me, somebody I didn't know you, and I wasn't supers that day. But when we were at that same meet, I'm like, I knew I was there to hit a qual total, but I didn't want to ever not push myself. And it helped if there was stronger people in the room, such as yourself. You know what I'm saying? And
no, I think I actually talk about this quite a bit. Again, I think that I was so fortunate to be in the time that I was, because you had guys like Brent Mikesell, who I think is so underrated. Like, I don't hear his name anywhere near as much as we should hear his name, in my opinion. just an unbelievable squatter, unbelievable back, like just crazy strong. But, he came in and broke the record somewhere in the low 1,040s.
Mm-hmm.
And like by the time he was done, he went 1170, I think.
Yes.
And he was he was in the forefront of all of that until Goggins beat him to 1100. But it was like the record stood for all this time, and it took one guy to finally start breaking it, and then everybody else came along. And also, if you look at Gary Frank, like, he took the record at 25 something and just kept going. And then all of a sudden, everybody started going with him. And I really remember, especially with Brent, I remember thinking, oh, that's it. Like, no, there's no way people's bones are going to start shattering. Like, there's got to be a limit to what a human can do. And I watched him and went, no, I was wrong. There is no limit. I will never limit myself or anyone else in what they possibly can do after watching some of those guys do what they did.
Thanks for listening to the Courage Barbell Unlimited podcast. For more information, please visit CourageBarbell.com. Until next time.